Hey, folks, you got to hand it to the Patriotic Alliance's Gayton McKenzie, now the Sports, Arts, and Culture Minister in South Africa under the Government of National Unity. Even when he's not making headlines, he's making headlines. This one's actually good press for Gayton, and understandably so. The Independent Line, the media outlet that quit the press ombudsman because they were punished for misleading folks over the Ronaldo Khus video and other transgressions of press standards and conduct, appears to be the only outlet reporting today on press ombudsman activity. Specifically, the Iowa reports that the press ombudsman has directed News24 to apologize to Minister of Sports Gayton McKenzie over an article about his 800,000 Rand trip to the Olympics held in Paris, France last year. Now, it's interesting because Iqbal Survey and the IOL waste no time anytime they can get an angle up on News 24 as if they're competing with them. They should be competing with the facts and trying to bring the truth to South Africans and play the role of the fourth estate, not trying to one-up News 24. Both of these publications have challenges. But I remember this. If I recall correctly, I converted that 800,000 Rand into US dollars and then broke that down into what I project would be travel costs, business class for the minister and then accommodations, rental cars, security, all that. If I remember correctly, I stated it was not excessive or out of line with his role as sports minister, and at least one report that I did on the matter. But that's not what News 24 said. The ruling is made after McKenzie, through his special advisor, Charles Sayers, lodged a complaint at the press council over an article titled, "Send Me! McKenzie's gravy train to Paris Olympics cost taxpayers 800,000 Rand." At the time, I remember saying that, what's the point of the story? It seems to be gratuitous. Anyway, the article was written by News 24's parliamentary reporter Jan Herba, who published that on the 14th of October, 2024, 2 months after the games were completed. Herba called the expenses exorbitant and very steep. In his complaint, Gayton McKenzie argued that it was problematic to suggest that being part of an official trip that cost a lot of money means being on a gravy train, and said that it was unacceptable to insinuate that there was something unethical, dishonest, and self-serving about the trip. Those are exactly the points that I made in my video on the topic. Yeah, I mean, government officials have responsibility to travel abroad and to do things. So I thought that the article was a bit out of line. And apparently the press ombudsman agrees, and certainly the Independent Line agrees. Now, he further objected to comparing the cost incurred by superfans, a hot topic that Ronaldo Khus brought to everyone's attention, which made him a target, about superfans, those who attended a different set of sporting events, to what it actually cost to fly him to the Olympics. He argued that this implies that he somehow decided to replace the superfans with his own presence. Not the case at all. I mean, President Ramaphosa went to the Springboks' victory in France for the World Cup, and while he was annoying and attention-grabbing, ripping the trophy out of players' hands, it certainly wasn't out of place for him to be there as the head of the Republic, nor was it for the sports minister. Now, according to the Independent Line, Gayton said that News 24 failed to approach the ministry or the department for comment or clarity on any of the matters that they reported on. Well, that's hardly surprising. They reported on questions that were answered in parliamentary session. News 24 submitted that the complaint was without merit and should be dismissed because, first, the article touches on a matter of public interest. That's true. Namely how public money is spent, and second, that it provides details of questions put to the complaint during a session of the Sports, Arts, and Culture Portfolio Committee. That's true. But in the interest of full disclosure, the newspaper should have made a good faith effort to ask the minister or his staff for comment on the issue. They're in South Africa. When I ask, I have to go through hoops and I never get responses. But they have an obligation to try that. They're there. The deputy press ombudsman said that News 24 breached clause 1.2 by creating the erroneous impression that the 1.8 million Rand that was actually spent was spent on McKenzie and his support team, whereas this amount was spent on all 8 officials who were at the games, and failing to mention that South African athletes were accommodated free of charge in Olympic Village during the games. Now, that's interesting. That was ignored. I don't even recall that being mentioned in the article. For the breach, News 24 is required to publish an apology to Gayton McKenzie. Also, they're ordered to update the summary at the top of the article and make it clear that the 1.8 million Rand was not spent on the minister and his support team, but on all 8 officials who were at the Olympics. Now, I'm pleased that the IOL covered this story, but I remain dismayed at how when the ombudsman decides in favor of things that they like, in other words, bad news for the News 24 outlet, they'll cover the story. When the ombudsman rules against them, they toss their toys out of the pram like a petulant child. The Independent Line is very episodic when it comes to its view of the press ombudsman. Now, News 24 and IOL should be held to a standard. They are registered as media outlets in South Africa, and they should comply with this voluntary organization. Self-policing, not government oversight and oppression of speech, is the way to go. It's up to organizations to behave up to a code. And good journalism requires objectivity, something that IOL isn't very familiar with. But in this case, they've covered the story correctly, and Gayton McKenzie will get his due. Hopefully, this video will get some play and people see it and see that Gayton is owed an apology from News 24. What say you, South Africa? I think Gayton McKenzie deserves an apology, which is interesting because my next video about Gayton McKenzie, I've got all kinds of questions for Gayton McKenzie because I'm puzzled as to what he's claiming in the video. So you should stay tuned for that video. And maybe if you like what I say about Gayton in this video, you might not like the next one. I guess we'll find out. Cheers, folks.